Okay, so we are now recording, and I would love to hear from you any ideas you have about how, in actuality, we can solve this issue of intergenerational poverty and abuse and help pull out students from their current situation and give them a second chance at life and access to opportunity. So with that, go ahead and unmute yourself and contribute any ideas or thoughts that you may have.
One idea that I have is I think some corporations are seeing it more and more now, that including more diversity, more inclusion in your workplace is more important. I think that a company should be creating employee resource groups, which means that certain labels of diversity within the group where they can come and have a voice together. And I think you get more done that way, because if you have, for say, an Asian American group, or I should just say Asian, an Asian ethnicity group, or a black group, or whatever you want to say, they can also pinpoint more on where they think that impoverished youths or youths of their own or whatever can help out. And I think companies should do that. Hire more people of color. I'm thinking off the top of my head. I think that companies should create goals on how, of every year increasing their diversity, increasing that whatever, or inclusion, I should say, not whatever, where they can not, Ryan is intelligent, but he doesn't see, as a white person, doesn't see what someone else might. So rather than being like, how can I fix this? He'd be like, well, let me bring on someone that can fix this. So I think that might be a smart way to do it.
Another thing that I came to think of is like two main ways that I thought of. One of them is like, if you're a company or an individual who has a lot of money and influence, fund nonprofits and like organizations like the Leon Foundation of Excellence and other ones that are trying to work alongside kids. They're not necessarily a part of the public system, but they're trying to work within the system. So definitely one of them for me would be providing donations to those like smaller organizations. And another one, I sort of came to think of it, is like this sort of concept of micro internships. I just learned like before when I applied to this. And so I think that's a very useful concept for companies to include in their like policy or strategy. There are so many young people who are motivated to learn and motivated to give what they have. And so giving the opportunity for young people to work at a company, like a micro internship for maybe like a week, 2 weeks, a month, and sort of have that young person or group of people perform that micro internship at your company. They will be able to get the training, they will be able to form connections and network and gain experience. And even if like the monetary reward might not be that much, you still are giving them like that chance to show what they've got.
I think also going off of what Anna Sophia said, it's amazing to give to nonprofits, and we should be doing that too. But I think big companies also have the power to help give to underfunded schools too, because schools don't receive equal funding. Schools get funded through property taxes. So schools that are in wealthier areas actually get more money than schools that are in impoverished areas. So you could provide a lot of very tangible resources to students that nonprofit organizations aren't reaching, because they can't reach all of them, but the school system can.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I would also touch on that too. I would if I were them, I would invest in community centers. Like, there's a lot of community centers, especially in certain areas that no one really like that touches on. A lot of people do a lot of really good grassroots work. So I would invest in the infrastructure of these community programs, and I would set up basically sort of like a healing program, to where a lot of these kids could go and impair with basically um, clinical psychologists that really do really work in their field that can help them heal. I was, I'll have to do a lot of inner work, like unplug from a lot of triggers, like say, social media. Also have a station to where they can, basically like reform their diet, because that because a lot of them unfortunately don't have certain areas don't have access to basically like clean good food, and a lot of them need that education as well. And I would also at these businesses basically do sort of like in a way like a sort of basically like a in a way like a trade in a way to trade school, like basically like an incubator, to where these companies, some of them actually actively go into these neighborhoods or these areas, because that's another problem. A lot of these companies don't really actively go into these areas, or at least because you can't. A lot of these kids, unfortunately, they with regarding the opportunities, they can't apply or like um, have access to an opportunity that they don't see or hear about. So being able to genuinely engage in those communities and look and be able to reach out to them, and have sort of like in a way like a pro, peer-to-peer program, to where somebody within the company can guide them through depending on their interests. Because for example, a lot of these neighborhoods, there's like, a kid that may be interested in music, maybe interested in engineering. Get somebody within that company that has that similar interest to develop that genuine mentoring relationship. And you don't have to bring them up in the company, but equip them with the type of skills that they'll need, in the future. Like for example, one huge skill that a lot of these kids would need, that could help like with the disparity in technology, is being able to understand technology, what it is, certain assets like, or certain tenets like AI machine learning, so they can not only be on the curve, but be thriving and be ahead of the curve, because so they can pass that down to generations.
Anna Sophia Vera was right. I enjoyed every second of saying that name. So donations are really important. Apart from donations, I think business can also shift their operations to more purpose-driven. Not all businesses were founded with a purpose, but you can change and you can find a purpose and stick to it. So apart from donations, I think the first thing they could do is for those VPs, those presidents and CEOs to serve as mentors for low income and intergenerationally poor and traumatized students. They can go to those schools, they can participate in those programs, they can speak to students and teach them what is their journey, what they did to be successful, and what are the insights they can give to the students. The second thing would be to do some pro bono projects for organizations, nonprofits that serve those students, like the Leon Foundation of Excellence. Maybe you need a marketing project, maybe you need an agency to help you do some public relations work. And at the same time, when they are doing those pro bono projects for you, if they support your purpose, you can give some public exposure to those agencies. So it's like a win-win situation. I will have an internship in the fall, and I know that this firm, it's a public relations firm, and they do this kind of work for organizations, and they require and request that public exposure, but at the same time they do not charge you money for doing that project for you. So that's one option. And the third one from me is workshops for parents of how to be better parents, how to prevent trauma in their households, how to heal trauma if trauma did happen. Because like a lot of things, of course there are external things like racism, sexism, and like if you do not have money, it's also some kind of ageism and all kind of isms for you. But if the parents in the household, they are empowered and they know how to handle this, if their children do get traumatized from external things and bad things happen to their children, when they came home, their parents know how to comfort their children, how to talk to their children, and how to heal those trauma or prevent those trauma. And many times parents themselves are the sources of those trauma. Parents actually cause the trauma. they are not intentionally doing that, but it's just they do not know how to be a good parent. And a lot of parents, they like, it's also their first time to be a parent and they do not have those training. So those are my suggestions.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for all of your suggestions. They've been really very specific and concrete and realistic, so I really am proud of us for that. One thing I did want to just kind of like elaborate on what Anna Sophia said would be when, you know, if you're setting up donations, then to make sure that those are recurring, at least monthly or annually, just so like, because like a one-time donation thing can kind of come off as like performative. So making sure that through where you put your money, you're showing like an ongoing dedication to these services and these causes. In terms of like specific places you could donate, I was thinking obviously like bail funds or like Black Lives Matter or any other place like that. But I was also thinking that on the topic of trauma, I was thinking there are a lot of, or well, I know there are at least a few organizations that provide free therapy and mental health services for people of color and trans people as well. That that I think really touches on the point of trauma that we've been talking about this whole time. And I think that would be a really important place to put your money if you're dedicated to, or you want to show your dedication to people who are dealing with intergenerational trauma, racism, classism, and everything.
Yeah, one thing I thought is another thing you could even do is donate to politicians who have very progressive platforms, who want to do things like make it so, you know, our school funding isn't from property taxes. Like I believe Legend was saying that earlier, you know, because sometimes it's easier if you go right to the source of these things, you know, and you find politicians who do want to do these things. They want to, you know, maybe like defund the military and send some of that money to mental health services, to public schools, because, you know, obviously like the more you can donate to someone like this, the more likely it is that they'll win and they'll be able to, you know, they'll be able to implement these policies. So definitely donate, you know, like we were all saying, like to Black Lives Matter, to the bail funds, you know, to LGBT justice organizations, you know, all of those things, because those help start from the ground up. Because so much trauma is caused by prejudice, which is caused, you know, by like lack of knowledge. And the more resources that people have and the more education we can give people who aren't necessarily in those communities, you know, hopefully the less likely that at least some of the trauma people of color and other minorities experience, you know, can be decreased. So that's kind of like a twofold way, you know, just to kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think everyone's been saying really good points, and like given my educational background, this is something that I'm really trying to like reckon with. Just thinking about how business can actually be used more ethically and to provide more social change. And I think one thing that businesses can do is start by looking inside and seeing how are they treating their own employees, how are they empowering their employees to do well, and when they're hiring other individuals who come from maybe adverse backgrounds, how are they providing them the support to do well and to succeed well and to empower others. So and then also looking at like the operations of their business, is their supply chain like fair, are they making sure that everyone in every single step is doing well. So those things, and then definitely building partnerships with local communities and organizations that are already doing this type of work, so there's no need to recreate the wheel when there's already so much work that's being done. So better to just like provide your funding and expertise. Certain companies have different strengths, so like tech companies can provide like literal like laptops or like hardware and also software, and also just their knowledge and expertise, and using a lot of their mentorship and network to access broader communities. But that definitely has to start with making sure you're connected with people who actually know those communities well, so that there's better of a bridge. So it's not just corporations talking to students who come from a very different background. So there should be definitely like a bridge too.
I think everyone's been mentioning a lot of like a really diverse and wide array of like nonprofits and organizations that a large company can give to. I think one really fun idea, something that I've seen work, is if a company like hosts a philanthropy like dinner. So you invite all of your other bigwig business people with all of their money to like a dinner, and you like the topic of the dinner is, at this dinner we're going to talk about this philanthropy, and we're going to raise money for this specific philanthropy, and then the next dinner we're going to switch our focus to a different one so that you can hit different organizations that you want to donate to. So if his company wants to have a broader reach and wants to donate to multiple organizations, that's a good way to help create focus, because I think it can be really hard to be like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to do this, and it can just feel really daunting. But if you're like, okay, at this dinner we're doing this, and at this dinner next month we're also going to do this, that can be a really practical way to do it.
I think anyone who's assigned to work with any of these students on an individual mentorship level, whether that's someone in the company or someone that the company appoints to work with these students, they should be aware that intergenerational trauma and abuse isn't something that can just be fixed by a few motivating words or even just like providing resources. It's a process that has been basically instilled through a mixture of both trust and abuse. So it's not going to be a one fix solution. It has to be with many organizations in tandem, and getting the student the resources and making sure that they are able to utilize those resources.
I totally agree with everyone here. I love all of these ideas coming out, especially I think it was Lena who said that like make sure it's not just like a one-time donation. I really like that, because you don't want it to like be great for 1 year and then fall apart the next 5 years. So I think it is important to continue funding what you are funding. And also I really believe that we should target younger kids, because that's where a lot of like the brain development happens. So I think funding free preschools or high quality daycare would also be important, and also funding just field trips to the museum and all that can do a lot. That's
Yeah, I just want to add that like funding directly to like public schools and like schools around like poorer areas is very important. But also I think it's important to keep in mind that extracurricular programs and like the fine arts centers need funding within themselves, because at my high school it was like the fine arts center was like the most underfunded, but I also found with my peers and things that art and ways to express yourself through extracurriculars, things like that, was also a way of like therapy in a way. Like some people aren't so open to just talking about it. Some people aren't open to like going and getting counseling and therapy for themselves. But for some other people, they just need to express themselves. And a way that I think people can do that and like I guess like relieve the stress of schoolwork, because I know that's a big stressor for a lot of people, is to get more involved in like musical programs or art programs or things like that. And in today's day and age, I feel like they're very underfunded. So if like money could go towards that as like a specific like program, I think that'd be really beneficial for children.
So I do think that corporations should take risk in who they hire, and it's not every single hire every single time, but they should look at applicants that don't have 5 years of experience but maybe have 3. They should look at people who don't meet 100% of the qualifications, and kind of help them along the way so that they can do that if they are struggling with mentors and whatnot. I think also they should monitor how active they are in communities, and if they're dropping off in activity, and that they continuously incorporate feedback from that community.
One thing that might also be interesting, seeing as Ryan, you do run like a business and you like make actual products, so you like have companies or factories. Is just like being aware of where those companies might be and how they might be adversely or positively, I guess, affecting the communities in which they are existing. So like, there's a lot about environmental racism nowadays, and knowing like people of color are more likely to be adversely affected by like pollution from companies or things like that. And so just being aware of that and like maybe, I don't know. I mean, yes, you could just like build them other places, but also maybe like, oh, maybe we should like actually be working on like our pollution levels or decrease carbon dioxide emissions or greenhouse gases and things like that.
I've heard of a couple programs that have worked where like um, companies can give funding to people to like get their college degrees, and in exchange then those people can then like work for like, I don't know, 2 to 5 years in that company that like helped them pay for their studies. And it's like, I know a trade-off, maybe not for everybody. There's like options for governmental programs to do the same, but I guess that could be sort of a way for somebody who comes from a underprivileged background to have an option of getting an education funding, and then um, having a job after graduating. And even though it's, you commit 2 to 5 years, you're like learning from this company and forging a connection that way.
I think a good strategy for Ryan is if him and his board of directors believe in a nonprofit like the Leon Foundation, they could, easily sponsor it and give the capital so that the Leon Foundation can grow and reach more schools in different areas as well, maybe out other states. And with that, as it grows, as well as Ryan's, any of his companies really, with the people he knows, is able to get more sponsorship. If other companies or board of directors agree with what the Leon Foundation is doing. And I think that's a pretty simple, direct way to do it, since you both already know each other.
I just wanted to touch on like an example, because I know a lot of people have mentioned helping out schools directly. I live in a smaller community. We're a pretty rich district, I would say, but we have we're like the orthopedic capital of the world. So we have lots of orthopedic companies in our town that's their central capital. And our biggest one often helps schools and do projects that have to do with STEM and the orthopedic industry. So just learning about medicine and how that works and manufacturing. We've had a lot of the orthopedic companies come together with our local community college and work on doing a kind of manufacturing day where students can go through these kinds of factories or office buildings and learn about manufacturing and business. So just teaching students hands-on what your company provides, and teaching them what jobs are out there can also be helpful if you can't give money, or if you aren't ready to give money yet. I know that some companies, that's not really an excuse, but just like some companies don't do that sometimes. So just even just offering out your services, I guess, instead of monetary donations, because that can sometimes make a bigger difference on students than just sending out money to sending out money to school corporations, because that money might go towards something else that was not intended. So just an example.
Also, for to follow up on what Keely said, for like non-monetary donations, like I know Whole Foods, because I saw it once. Like if you eat in their cafe, they had like they had a mural once of like some local student students' art was like what's it called, showcased in Whole Foods. And I think maybe if you even like hold like a contest and have people ask like, oh, like do something that symbolizes what we believe in, and then featuring that, I think that could be very empowering for students as well.
I think something else that needs to be focused on is restructuring HR departments, because a lot of them are for the company and are not for the employees. And it makes it difficult to work with upper management and lower management as well.
So what I kind of had in mind, a lot of you guys have already touched on it because mine was so broad, like just a broad idea of just connecting with people from the lower income, just because, like, as we've been talking throughout our internship too, everything is based off connections, and a lot of people, it's a cycle. So like a lot of these people that come in, that are in these communities, they don't have the opportunity to make those connections. So I think that just should be one of the big focus. And as many of you guys have already gave ideas of how to do it, I just wanted to kind of clear that up in the, like I said, in that general statement. But also it's because poverty is it's like the root of all these other problems. Like because of poverty, you have parents who have problems within themselves, they carry it on to their children, and that's why it kind of goes into abuse and neglect and all this other stuff. And so I think that it is just a message to Ryan that it's great that you would also want to do that with your money, because that's something I would love to do, but I don't have the money to. So I just wanted to thank Ryan for that too, for considering that.
And suggestion that just was dropped into my mind, because Ryan, because like he reached out to us for suggestions, I would suggest that more companies do that with groups like this, nonprofits like this, organizations like this, reach out to the people and ask, okay, what can we do to better serve you?
All right, any final suggestions for Ryan? Okay. With that, I am going to drop my own 2 cents in here just so it's on the record for him. Again, this is my personal opinion, but for me, I think as companies, we need to make sure that we're paying our employees enough, a living wage, and then also educating them so that way they can learn how to financially be responsible and learn the ins and outs of making money, keeping money, saving money, and generating long-term wealth, so that way we can raise up the next generation. Additionally, I don't know how much power and control individual companies have over this, but advocating for a change in the judicial system from the standpoint that at this present moment, if a child experiences trauma and it's in the form of physical abuse, then it's recognized. If it's emotional or mental abuse, it's a lot harder to have that tangible evidence of that happening. And so we don't take action until it becomes physical and there's a broken arm or a bruised eye or sexual assault or something like that. So shifting what we choose to focus on as evidence of trauma for a child.